No matter where you are, no matter how far, just call my name. I'll be there in a hurry. On that you can depend and never worry. You see, my love is alive. It's like a seed that only needs the thought of you to grow. So if you feel the need for company, please, my darling, let it be me. Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from you. Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from you. Ain't no mountain high enough, nothing can keep me from you.
Welcome to Industry TV Network. In this video, we'll be touching on a few chronicles from the Motown days, starring Diana Ross. People can say what they want about Diana Ross, but she was an excellent performer and an excellent entertainer. Her success story, coming from the projects to becoming one of the greatest black female superstars we've ever had, maybe even the pioneer of the whole group, 3-woman group, R&B groups, and single R&B artists, taking it to that plateau. She was excellent, and I'm not going to take away from Diana. I love Diana. Diana's been a part of my life since a child. I'm 55, and my mom used to play her all the time. I know all of the Diana Ross songs. I know all of the Supreme songs. So this is a shout out before I begin this video to Diana Ross. We love you and we appreciate you. Also, shout out to Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson, who completed the package as far as the Supremes was concerned, her takeoff vehicle, and their mark in R&B history and black music, period. So I'm sorry that it ended that way, but they were young, and sometimes when you're young, you make a lot of mistakes and you really don't understand what it is you're doing. You're going by emotions. But she headed out, she started out, and she knew what she wanted. She went after it, and she achieved it. Unfortunately, in the society we live in, it was kind of cutthroat, but I have to give Diana Ross her proper salutations. Much love to you, Miss Ross. Let's begin. At the end of November 1978, Berry Gordy's father died at the age of 90 after a long illness. Berry was deeply saddened by the loss, as were many of the Motown artists. Pops had been the patriarch of the Motown family, and without him, many of the artists felt that things would never be the same. It's not that he was involved, Diana said at the time, but you just knew he was there and part of the family. At about this time, toward the end of 1978, director John Boorman submitted a movie treatment to John Calley, head of Warner Brothers. The film, entitled The Bodyguard, was intended as a vehicle for Diana Ross and Ryan O'Neal. Calley forwarded the 8-page treatment to Ryan, who thought it was excellent. He wanted to do the movie. But what about Diana? When the treatment was sent to her, she was immediately intrigued. She had known Ryan for 4 years, since she and Bob once owned a $500,000 Malibu Colony beachfront home close to one Ryan owned. Ryan, who had been married twice, used to jog on the beach in the nude. He wasn't easy to ignore. Diana had someone in her office read the treatment, and this person told her that the idea was clever and that she might want to consider doing the film. Diana then called Ryan to discuss the movie, and to reacquaint herself with him. The Bodyguard was envisioned as an exciting, tense, mysterious, sexy drama with a musical backdrop. It was about a black female singer who was making a career change and in the process distancing herself from her mentor/manager, a man very jealous of her and resistant of the idea. When the singer begins receiving death threats, she becomes frightened and decides to hire a bodyguard. She interviews dozens of men, most of whom are black and solidly built, until she chooses Ryan O'Neal, not because of his muscles, but because of his sharp instincts. In the next scene of the treatment, the singer is rehearsing for her act, and out of nowhere in the darkened theater, a shot rings out. She clutches her chest, which begins spurting blood. She drops to the floor, dead. Then, out of the wings, but still hidden by the shadow, steps a horrified Diana Ross. It was all a plan, and her bodyguard Ryan had concocted it. They had hired a double to see just how far whoever was after Diana would go to get her. Unfortunately for the phony Ross, the hired killers were quite serious about their work. Ryan convinces Diana to leave town with him for her own protection. While on the lam, they are overcome by a strong magnetism between them and fall in love. Barry had reservations about the bodyguard, not because of the obvious sensitivity of the subject matter, but because he didn't see it as a suitable vehicle for Diana Ross. But foremost in Diana's mind by this time was the opportunity to work with Ryan O'Neal. Besides his sandy-haired, blue-eyed good looks, there were many reasons why Diana found Ryan O'Neal, who was 3 years her senior, so appealing. One of the biggest reasons had to be his association with Barbra Streisand. At this time, Ryan was completing The Main Event, his second film with Barbra. Diana knew that he and Barbra had been lovers. Her friends say she was thrilled beyond words to have the opportunity to get close to someone who had been one of Barbra's paramours. Besides his affair with Streisand, Ryan O'Neal had also enjoyed tempestuous romances with a wide array of Hollywood notables, including Joan Collins, Barbara Parkins, Ursula Andress, and Bianca Jagger. But he had never ever been linked to a black woman. Diana would be the first. Barry used to say to her, "You're not so beautiful, but you have character in your face." Now she was beautiful and able to attract handsome movie stars. He is an incredible lover, totally devoted to giving a woman pleasure, his ex-wife Joanna Moore said. "What? Are you kidding me?" Ryan told Diana when she inquired about his Playboy image. "How can I be a Playboy when I've got my kid sleeping with me in my bed? It's just not true, Diana." It is not clear if Diana Ross was aware that The Main Event had actually been developed with her in mind. Howard Rosenman, the executive producer of the project, said that the script was sent to high-powered Hollywood agent Sue Mengers, who was working with Diana at this time. Rosenman asked Mengers if she could somehow secure Ryan O'Neal, whom she also represented, to star with Diana in the movie. But then Mengers, who had packaged What's Up Doc for O'Neal and Streisand, decided instead to bring those two together again. So Barbra Streisand ended up working with Ryan O'Neal in The Main Event, a successful film that was intended for Diana Ross. Surely, if Diana knew anything about what had actually happened, she would have been upset. While she was waiting for a movie property to come her way, a vehicle intended for her that would have been perfect was offered to Barbra Streisand, her obvious competition in the movie business. Because Diana was searching for business direction and simultaneously trying to seize control of her career, she wanted to be in the company of someone who was shrewd and could advise her. She had heard how Ryan O'Neal had masterminded his daughter Tatum's career as her manager, and she was impressed by his business acumen. "People want so much of me, she said at this time. "Making the right choices can be so hard. There's always some new obstacle to get through. When I left the Supremes, I had to establish my own sound, my own identity. For Lady Sings the Blues, I had to learn a whole new style of singing. Then when I had to take charge, the expression is show business. That last word I finally found out is no accident. I am a businesswoman." When Diana discussed her problems concerning Berry Gordy, and Motown with Ryan, he would listen carefully and try to offer sound advice. "If I had what you make, I'd be rich forever," Ryan told Diana one day over a Beverly Hills lunch as he advised her on investments. For the most part, Ryan O'Neal avoided serious discussions with Diana Ross. He wasn't particularly interested in her life, the Supremes, Lady Sings the Blues, or show business. He had a movie to make. Without Berry Gordy running interference for her, Diana would have to decide for herself who were Hollywood's Prince Charmings and which ones had ulterior motives. In January 1979, Diana Ross, who was about to turn 35, opened her own offices in the same building as Motown on Sunset Boulevard and Vine Street in Hollywood. "Why the hell does she need her own offices?" Berry Gordy asked Suzanne DePaz. At this time, Diana sent a letter to all of her business associates on gold-embossed stationery with her picture on the left-hand corner, one eye, half a nose, and half a mouth in a box. "Dear Sir or Madam, all future invoices and or statements should be directed to my office, Diana Ross Enterprises, Inc. I wish to express my sincere appreciation for your patience and cooperation in this matter." Usually, a chief assistant would lay down the law. "Call her Miss Ross," she would tell new employees. "Never ever call her Diana, and never Ms. Ross. She hates that." "I want respect," Diana had said, "like Berry had respect. Even I call him Mr. Gordy in public. There's nothing wrong with respect, is there?" Finally, behind her back, her staff began to call her Miss Ross to you, a tradition that's been handed down to her employees over the years. "Did Miss Ross to you call yet this morning? Better not leave for lunch because Miss Ross to you is on her way." Often, employees were hired to live with Diana in the Maple Avenue home and oversee the day-to-day operations there. Diana didn't particularly enjoy having strangers live with her, and the home wasn't big enough to ensure total privacy for either her or her employees. It was difficult for her to maintain the aloofness she feels is important in order for her to be the boss. Diana Ross constantly struggled to keep the upper hand with staff members, always trying to distance herself from these interlopers in her home, whom she felt were getting too familiar with her. One assistant who worked for and lived with Diana for about 6 months remembered that she and the boss had a fight over what the employee called the Miss Ross thing. It happened innocently enough. The phone rang and the assistant answered it. "Diana, it's Mr. Gordy," she said. After conversing and hanging up, Diana glared at the employee and said, "You call me Miss Ross or you're out of here." The disagreement ensued when the assistant said that she could understand calling her boss Miss Ross in public, but why in the privacy of home when it was just the two of them? "Because I said so," was Diana's explanation. It was a short argument. Despite all that she had achieved in her life and career, and the way in which she was revered by her public, Diana was still obviously very insecure and often even easily intimidated, some say. Certainly, this part of her personality became apparent the night Natalie Cole visited her backstage and began to impulsively sing at a piano during a small gathering. As Nat King Cole's daughter sang, backstage visitors cheered. Diana, who watched silently, looked disappointed and hurt. After all, she had graciously welcomed Natalie into her private domain, and now it seemed that Cole was showing off in front of her, Diana's friends. After listening to Natalie for a few minutes, Miss Ross pulled an employee into a corner and told her that she did not want that woman singing in her dressing room. The employee had to tactfully get Natalie away from the piano. Perhaps Diana was still smarting from Natalie Cole's comments to Rolling Stone in the early 70s that she can out-sing Diana Ross any day of the week, even though Cole has since said that she was misquoted. Though it may be understandable that Diana Ross would feel a need to be competitive with a beautiful black female entertainer like Natalie Cole, why she would feel any insecurity around her was baffling, considering her own superstar status. That Diana was also in steady competition with members of her female staff members also seemed perplexing. Just as she wouldn't tell her Supreme's partners which perfumes and lipsticks she used, she was still just as determined that her look remained unique. Some women who have worked with her have said that they were not allowed to use the same cosmetics the boss used, nor could they have their hair styled by whichever Beverly Hills coiffeur responsible for Diana's hair at the time. One assistant said that she was reminded by Miss Ross that any telephone calls that came in from men are just because they're trying to get to me, not you, and don't you forget it. The assistant said she was later reminded that the desk she used in Miss Ross's home is my desk, and don't you forget it. Most of Diana's employees could never determine whether she was being serious, terribly insecure, or merely testing them to see how much pressure they could take. Diana, like Berry Gordy, subscribes to the theory that the more stress a person endures, the better he or she will be for it. Anyone who works for me is going to be successful in this life, she proudly told the employee. Diana requested that anyone who was to work closely with her take EST classes. She felt that Erhard's courses had done her so much good that she did not want to associate with anyone who didn't share the same philosophies. But after employees graduated from Erhard's classes, enlightened and newly independent staffers were usually not willing to take unlimited pressure from Miss Ross. They often ended up fired for talking back or asking soul-searching, est-like questions of her that she often asked herself but didn't appreciate hearing from the help. "Why are you always so angry?" one est-trained staffer asked Diana shortly before she was dismissed. "You're the star. You have nothing to worry about." Often, Diana was at her wit's end as to how to handle someone who, in her viewpoint, simply would not take direction. She often appeared mystified by the fact that there were people working for her who often did not agree with her. Firing a person often led to another problem, replacing that employee with someone unfamiliar with the Ross program. When Diana was at a complete loss, which was often, Suzanne DePass acted as intermediary between boss and disgruntled staff member. A typical day found Diana and an employee sitting in Suzanne's Motown office, an angry Miss Ross steadfastly refusing to talk directly to the indignant assistant. "You tell her she is not doing her job properly," Diana commanded Suzanne. And you tell her I am not a babysitter, the employee told DePaz. And I am not a dishwasher either. And you tell her that she better not use that tone with me, Diana told DePaz. DePaz would throw her hands up in the air and exclaim, "Aye, aye, aye." Then she would referee dutifully. It was all in a day's work for a woman known to be one of the slickest, most articulate officials in the Berry Gordy camp. After Suzanne finished her arbitration, Diana and the employee would leave smiling. They would appear to be friendly until the next time. In the Diana Ross Enterprises office, Diana's employees had the responsibility of coordinating her tour schedules, solving her personal problems, dealing with Motown on promotion for her records, and assisting her with anything else she needed. However, as soon as she hired her own staff, she found that Motown no longer promoted her music with the same fever as it once had. This was customary behavior at Motown, and even Diana wasn't exempt. If you bring outsiders in, the members of the family resent it and stop giving you their all, Berry had warned her. Those on Diana's first staff remember her as learning how to be a tough taskmaster. Even though she lived and worked in New York most of the time, she always phoned her office 15 minutes before her 5 employees had to report to work at 8 o'clock to learn who arrived early. Everyone had to stay until 6, and she would call a few minutes before that hour to make certain everybody was still there. When she was in town and on her way up to the 18th floor, one of the parking attendants would phone from the garage to warn her staff, "Miss Ross is headed up there. Y'all better watch out." Miss Ross to you didn't want you smiling or talking to anybody in the hallway either, remembered one former employee. She was always gracious to any visitors in the office, but as soon as that person would leave, she would snap at the rest of us. I liked her, idolized her, until I worked for her. Then I saw her in a whole different light. Her average fan would have been mortified by the experience of working for the real Miss Ross. 2 cardinal rules at Miss Ross's new office. No one was to play old Motown music, and there was to be no mention of the Supremes. Once, one of her employees looked in the cupboard underneath the sink in her private bathroom and discovered all of her Supremes gold records. In January 1979, Diana Ross was scheduled to meet with writer Tom Burke for a Cosmopolitan feature. She agreed to have lunch with him at a Beverly Hills restaurant. The maitre d' prepared a private dining room for Diana and her guests. He obtained a large arrangement of fresh camellias from the same posh Beverly Hills florist who did arrangements for her home, then placed the flowers on her table, as well as on surrounding tables that wouldn't be occupied. I know all the stars, the maitre d' enthused to Tom Burke, who had arrived a few minutes early. They all come here. But Diana, she is special among all of the ladies up there on the screen. Forever she will be special. His loyalty and devotion to Diana was a perfect example of Ross's fans' feelings for her. Diana's got sophistication, finesse. She is the definition of cool. And look what she's been through. The force of her personality always drew people to her when she was in public. They would find excuses just to be near her. There are some performers who are admired for their brilliant work, but they are not adored. They may get top billing, but when they appear in public, they are rarely besieged by fans. On the other hand, talent does not always guarantee superstardom. Looks help, so does charm and other assets. Marilyn Monroe, for instance, combined sophistication and a sexual body with an underlying little girl lost quality. That worked for her. When she was in public, she was hard to resist. But Diana Ross's charisma is a combination of beauty, a sexy singing voice, and worldliness. There used to be a childish quality to her persona, but as a result of years of experiences, that part of her was replaced by a new cosmopolitanism. So strong is the total package, it is difficult not to be dazzled when she walks into a room. Diana knows that she possesses a magnetic persona. She thinks of it as a hit record and always sings it for all it's worth. Tom Burke recalled that, dressed in earth-toned silks, she materialized at the door of their private dining room, smiling, exactly on time. A white orchard at her clear brow, her presence filled the room more seductively than the flowers. As soon as they sat down, a maniacal young waiter burst in on them with more fresh flowers. Diana was startled by the waiter and spilled a few drops of water on the tablecloth. A team of nervous busboys cleared the table and they laid a new covering cloth in a moment. A few minutes later, another waiter burst in with another flower for her. "Miss Ross," he said reverentially, "this is a tiger lily, and I removed all of the pollen so that it wouldn't soil your clothes." "Oh, please, Miss Ross," he begged, his hand trembling. "Let me cut the stem. Let me pin it on." "Oh my, yes, please do," she said. By now, Diana had also learned to be much less pliable in the hands of reporters. In the 60s, she and the Supremes were taught to say anything for the sake of a good story. Now Diana didn't have to care as much. When Ellen Shawn from Ladies' Home Journal needed more interview time with her, Diana said bluntly, "Really, you've got enough, my dear. I mean, that's enough. I think maybe if you put yourself in my shoes, you would see why it's difficult." Diana's public and much of the media loved her celebrity status. For those who had to work with Miss Ross Chiu, it was a different story. One of Ryan O'Neal's former business associates recalled that Ryan thought Diana was extremely spoiled. I think the main thing on his mind was the Bodyguard. He was determined to do this film with her because his movie career was very inconsistent at this time. He would do anything to get her to do this movie. I doubt that Ryan was interested in her as a woman. Ryan likes to control women. Diana was working against being controlled at this time. But Ryan had told other friends that even though the film was what brought the two of them together, he soon found Diana to be a fascinating, exciting woman. He admired her determination and ambition, both traits that reminded him of Barbara. Also, Ryan never liked shrinking violets, and Diana certainly did not fall into that category. Her insistence that all of her employees call her Miss Ross fascinated him. He thought he had seen it all when he was in Barbra Streisand's company. Ryan had said that even Barbara didn't insist upon being called Miss Streisand, which absolutely amazed Diana. Regardless of how he felt about her, it is true that Ryan's film career had been inconsistent, and he apparently could not get a commitment from Warner's to release The Bodyguard unless he and John Boorman could get Diana to agree to star in it. The studio heads perceived the film as an interracial love story. The co-star would have to be black, and Diana was the biggest black female box office draw at the time. Diana wanted to take the relationship at a slow pace. After all, it was based on business. She would have one of her female assistants accompany her and Ryan on dates. If anyone asks, "You say he's your boyfriend," she would instruct the employee. Perhaps an indication of how she at first felt about Ryan O'Neal came on the day he called her Diane in public, and she corrected him. "Diana," she said with a gracious smile. "You can call me Diana." They were getting close. He was certainly closer to her than anyone who was supposed to call her Miss Ross. but Ryan O'Neal was not yet privileged enough to call her Diane. Diana finally read the treatment more carefully and discovered, much to her horror, that the film would include a nude scene. Diana decided then that she would not appear in it, but Ryan urged her to reconsider. He wined and dined her for the next few weeks, showering her with affection and giving her expensive gifts. She was, quite simply, swept off her feet. Diana Ross was falling in love. She thought that they were the most perfect couple the world had ever seen, and indeed, they did look striking. He, muscular, blonde, and dashing. She, thin, dark, and glamorous. Diana was said to be put off by Ryan's conceit, but she said in his defense, "Nobody's perfect." Diana's road manager, Michael Brown, told writer Diane Albright the man that she had picked to be her husband was Ryan O'Neal. She thought he was the man of her dreams, even though he really wasn't. He didn't have the kind of money she wanted in a man, but he was so damn good looking, she couldn't resist him. On March 26, 1979, Diana hosted her own 35th birthday party at her Beverly Hills home, with guests including Tony Perkins, Gregory Peck, and Tony Curtis. Diana's brother and sister, Chico and Rita, were also present. She greeted 50 guests in a James Galanos bare-shouldered black silk crepe gown, which she wore with a white jacket beaded with textured flowers and leaves. Her hair was slicked back into a bun. She looked every inch the heiress to a throne, someone observed. The dinner party was lavish. She decorated the house with calla lilies and lit it with candles. As party favors, Diana handed guests small wands and bottles of detergent for bubble blowing. She invited her guests to visit the bathroom in the children's wing where Michael Jackson had painted graffiti on the walls. "God bless Diana," said the late actress Joan Hackett, who came to the party holding a huge potted ficus tree as a gift. She's revived fun in Hollywood. For her birthday gift, Berry presented Diana with a new sable jacket. "Not bad," Diana said. Mary Wilson, 7 months pregnant with her third child, also attended the party, telling everyone she was now embarking on a solo career. "And I asked Diana to go to my opening night in New York in August, and she said she would." "Oh, please call me Mary, honey," she told a friend. "Never Miss Wilson." In the middle of the party, Ryan took off his jacket and, in a tuxedo shirt and slacks, strutted onto the dance floor and broke into wild gyrations to the Sister Sledge song, "The Greatest Dancer." As everyone gathered around and applauded, Diana stood starry-eyed on the sidelines. "Isn't he wonderful?" she said happily. "Don't you just love him?" This was the first time some of her friends met Ryan O'Neal, and he certainly made a positive impression on them. He was gorgeous and very physical with her, hugging and kissing her tenderly on the cheek, but never on the mouth. He had given Diana an amethyst ring with inset diamonds as a birthday present. He was very fatherly towards Diana's 3 children. They sat on his lap. He told them stories and tried to keep them busy as Mother flitted about being the gracious star hostess. Even Berry Gordy found him to be charming and witty. "The man's got the whitest damn teeth I ever seen in my life," Gordy said of O'Neal. At this time, Diana and her children spent a couple of weeks with Ryan and his youngsters at the O'Neal family home in Malibu. The 2 of them would share picnics with their offspring on the beach in back of Ryan's house, and then a governess would herd Rhonda, Tracy, Chudney, and Ryan's children, Tatum and Griffin, back into the house and prepare them for bed. Meanwhile, their parents shared white wine and intimate moments on the sand. During this stay at the O'Neal home, Diana and Ryan attended a private party at Alice's restaurant on the Malibu Pier, and another partygoer claimed that they were sitting very close together and gazing into each other's eyes, like they were hungering for each other. He said that later, while they were having Ryan's car filled with gas, the two of them embraced and kissed like lovesick teenagers right there at the gas station. The only sour note in this duet came from Ryan's 15-year-old daughter Tatum, who, it was said by friends of Ryan's, didn't like Diana Ross or anyone else her father ever dated. Diana must have noticed that Tatum was spoiled. She got away with much more than her daughters ever did. When one of Diana's friends at Motown told her the following story, she must have wondered about Ryan as a father. After Tatum won the Oscar for her role in Paper Moon, Ryan took her out of the private Beverly Hills school she was attending to have her tutored at home. When Tatum announced to her friends that she was leaving, they stood up and applauded. She was mortified and complained to Ryan. "But Tatum, that's what actors live for," he said, very seriously. "Applause." "Oh my God, I can't believe that story is true," Diana said. "That's Ryan," the friend concluded. "Well, I'm sorry. Ryan is just too sweet to have said that. It's not true," she said. On April 5th, 1979, Diana embarked on a 6-week, 28-city concert tour of the United States. On April 9, she took a break to fly into Los Angeles from Baltimore and be a presenter at the Academy Awards. Since she had to be at the Dorothy Chandler Music Center for rehearsals during the day and returned there well before the 7 p.m. ceremonies began, Diana booked an expensive suite at the Bonaventure Hotel, not far from the music center. This way she could dress in leisure, and also, she told her staff, "You can watch the show from my suite, and then I can get in touch with you people if I have a terrible emergency." By 5 p.m., 3 members of Diana's staff milled about eating from the lavish buffet she had set up in the suite. She was pacing back and forth in her white silk James Galanos gown, upset because someone had forgotten to bring the matching wrap. One of her employees, Jeffrey Wilson, was supposed to pick up the accessory from Galano's offices in West Los Angeles and bring it to her so that the outfit would be complete. When Wilson failed to show up at the appointed time, Diana called her office. "He left a long time ago, Miss Ross. He should be there any minute." Other employees in the suite remembered that Diana slammed down the phone. She lit a cigarette, stubbed it out, and lit another one almost immediately. She looked at the clock and swore under her breath. There was a knock at the door. One of her staff members answered it. "It's Mr. O'Neill." "Ryan," he corrected. "Oh, it's you," Diana said. "That's a hell of a hearty greeting. You certainly don't seem happy to see me." "Oh, Ryan, don't talk that way." Diana put her arms around his neck and gave him a kiss on the cheek. There were employees watching, so she had to be discreet. "I was expecting my wrap. He hasn't gotten here yet." Ryan O'Neill consulted his watch. "It's still early." "But I'm so worried," she said. Ryan told her to do whatever it is that she had to do and offered to answer the door when her employee arrived. "Let me make a phone call first." She dialed a number. It rang and rang. Her lips tightened. She slammed the receiver down. Ryan relaxed in his chair, watching her with amused eyes. She never ceased to make him smile. "She's just so silly sometimes," he would say. The others in the room acted as if they were glued to the television, when actually they were all hoping she wouldn't take their anger out on them. Her anger out on them. Diana retreated into the bedroom and slammed the door, leaving Ryan with her staff. There was a knock. "Will someone answer that?" Diana shouted from the bedroom. "Well, look who's here," Ryan's voice was jovial. Come in, come in. Diana, it's Tatum." Just joking, he said, almost choking in a burst of laughter. It's your rap. Is it all right? She called. Looks great to me. I'll bring it in. I better go, Jeffrey Wilson said, handing the rap to Ryan. No, you wait here, Ryan insisted. After bringing the rap into the bedroom, he returned to the employee. You look like you could use a drink. Yeah, I probably could, but I better not. She'll kill me. I bet I'm in real trouble anyway. When I saw how late it was getting, I took a chance and drove on the shoulder. I didn't know what was worse, getting a ticket or facing the wrath of Ross, Ryan laughed. Wilson looked uncomfortable, but Diana's entrance saved him from having to answer. How do I look? She asked. Wilson recalled that Ross posed in the bedroom door wearing her white Galanos sheath with draped bodice and spaghetti straps. Her necklace and earrings were simple, so as not to distract from the elaborate white-on-white embroidered straight skirt. The white wrap was the perfect accessory against her bronzed shoulders. Her hair was pulled straight back from her face. Ravishing, sensational, gorgeous, Ryan pronounced. He knew all the words she needed to hear. Almost too good to be true. And you, she asked the employee, do you think I look pretty? She batted her eyelashes at him. Yes, Miss Ross, he said nervously. You certainly do. Fine, you ride in the elevator with us then. Why were you late? The traffic was... But you see, you must plan for these things. Yes, Miss Ross. Ryan clapped the employee on the shoulder. You got here with the rap. That's the important thing. Now, doesn't Diana look great? Tell her how good she looks. Diana smiled and slicked back her hair with her hands. She took a small bottle of perfume from her purse and squirted it on her wrists. You look great, Miss Ross. She ignored him. No, call her Diana, urged Ryan. Diana turned around and faced Ryan, her lips curved in that overpowering smile. Her eyes were hard as granite. She didn't say a word. The elevator door opened. She hurried through the lobby, O'Neill at her heels, to her waiting limousine. Recalled Jeffrey Wilson. It was the longest elevator ride in my life. As Ryan and the employee watched, the chauffeur opened the door and Diana got in. Ryan had decided he wasn't going to go with her to the ceremonies, probably because he didn't want to encourage the gossip about them. Barry and Suzanne were waiting for her inside the limousine. They would accompany her to the awards. The door closed and the car sped off. Back in the suite, Ryan watched the television ceremony with Diana's staff. When Diana walked out onto the stage, he burst out laughing. Jeffrey Wilson sank deep into the couch. Diana did not have the wrap on. On April 19th, when Diana Ross appeared at the Omni Theater, Ryan showed up in Atlanta to see her, as well as Tatum, who was filming Little Darlings there. While there, Ryan and Diana attended a B.B. King concert. They were very close during the concert, said Alon Vanilius, general manager of the hall at which King was appearing. They joined King on stage for his encore. Diana did a lot of prancing around with Ryan, who was playing the tambourine. In May 1979, to coincide with her current tour, Motown released what many consider to be one of Diana Ross's finer albums, The Boss, produced by Nicholas Ashford and Valerie Simpson. The Boss not only gave Diana another hit on the dance floor, but also reflected her new independence. It was the first album release that Berry Gordy had nothing to do with. When they cut the album, Ross, Ashford, and Simpson resided in New York City, miles away from Gordy's influence. Gordy must have realized that his former protege was determined to keep him out of her life and career by now. Still, Berry was persistent. A few months before the album's release, He gave Diana a $175,000 diamond bracelet. This puzzled Berry's friends, who thought he was trying to win her back. If that was Berry's intention, it didn't work. Said her producer, Valerie Simpson, of the album, Diana had some things she wanted to say in a particular way. Listen to It's My House. The song is about a modern woman who tells her lover, I'm independent and may fit you into my space, but on my terms. Those are Diana's ideas. The album's cover boasted a new look for Diana. Long mane of hair and scant clothing that revealed plenty of leg and chest. The apparent message, I'm the boss of my own image now. As she worked to promote The Boss, Diana discovered that her independence from Motown had a price. While she was out on the road, Motown was doing little for her in terms of record promotion. As soon as she would leave town, the wheels of promotion would always come to a grinding halt, recalled a former employee of Ross. She came back in town for a day or so, and I remember that she and Michael Roshkind were having a fight about the way Motown was treating her, since she'd become so independent. The door was closed and the secretary told me not to go in there. I could hear them arguing outside the door. Later, I learned she was screaming at Roshkind and pulling him by the tie. Berry was out of the picture, and all hell was breaking loose. Diana also discovered that she was losing money on the tour. It was an expensive show, to date, the last big budgeted spectacle she would do, and she was under the impression that Motown was helping to defray the exorbitant costs. However, Gordy's company did not do so. Diana Ross Enterprises, Inc. was on its own. Berry probably took the position that if his protege yearned for independence, she had to pay the price. Between the poor promotion of The Boss and what was happening out on the road, she felt betrayed by Mike, Shelley Berger, and Susan DePass, who were responsible for her day-to-day career, but mostly by Berry, in whom she had long entrusted practically her entire life. On a professional level, she felt that he had a responsibility to her as Motown's biggest artist to make certain that she made money, not lost it. On a personal level, she was surprised to learn that Berry wasn't watching out for her. After the fight with Roshkind, she sat at one of the desks in a Motown office and began to compose a handwritten letter to Gordy. As she wrote, she began to sob. Finally, she became so upset, she went to the ladies' room and then left the building, leaving the letter behind. One of her employees found it, read it, and saved it. The letter detailed a lot of love for Berry that she could not express verbally because she was in such pain over what she felt was being done to her, said the employee. She was hurt because to her, it was obvious that he was trying to teach her a lesson. She felt that he was making sure she would lose money on the road so that she would come back crawling to him. She was torn, I think, between Ryan and Berry, and maybe trying to make Berry jealous. She was hurt because that didn't seem to be working. Ultimately, perhaps she thought that if Ryan would marry her, that would have sent Berry over the edge. But that didn't seem to be in the picture either. This confusion and vulnerability was a side of Diana Ross people rarely got to see. I saw the magic of the star at night, and I saw the bitch by day, but not much in between. I realized then that she was carrying a heavy load, that she was hurting, and of course, taking it out on all of us who had to work for her. By this time, the National Enquirer had learned of the romance between Ryan and Diana and featured the two of them on the cover of its May 29, 1979 issue. The story indicated that they were desperately trying to keep the hot and heavy romance a secret for fear that their interracial love affair would hurt their careers. That didn't seem likely, considering the fact that Diana's former husband was white. If Ryan O'Neal did not want to be seen in public with her, she probably would have dropped him. After another month with her, Ryan O'Neal realized that Diana Ross is as temperamental as she is determined. He admired her ambition, but disliked her emotional outbursts. As he watched the way she handled her life and business, the constant chaos that swirled around her, not to mention the stormy mood swings that have become so much a part of the Ross mystique, Ryan was becoming less enchanted with her. This is ironic, since O'Neal is not known in Hollywood as being a particularly easygoing person himself. It was becoming apparent to anyone who cared to watch that Ryan O'Neal considered himself a free man. During this time, he had a one-week affair with Margaret Trudeau, who said later that she found him shallow. "I had enough of Ryan's conceit and his self-obsession," she said. Finally, the moment of reckoning had arrived. Ryan had to have an answer from Diana about the movie. John Boorman flew to New York to meet with her to get her final decision. The meeting did not go well. Diana, understandably, did not want to make the wrong decision now that she had seized so much control. The Wiz, her idea, was a mistake in many ways, and she didn't want to follow it with another one. She wasn't certain that she liked the treatment to the Bodyguard, and told Boorman that she didn't understand the need for all of the violence and bad language. She also would not do the nude scene, didn't want to sing in the film, and wasn't happy with the title because it emphasized Ryan's character and not her own. In other words, she was going to pass on the Bodyguard. Boorman realized that the movie would never be made and reported as much to John Calley of Warner Brothers. Calley begged Boorman to fly to Los Angeles and discuss a plan to convince Diana to do the movie. As much as they tried, that's how much she was determined that her mind was made up. 2 years later, she would tell writer Roderick Mann, "I never actually saw the script, just the treatment, and I didn't want to commit to that. So it collapsed as a project, which was a pity. Of course, I'm lucky. I don't have to do films for a living." "You want to do a black-white love story?" Berry Ever the Competitor asked her. "Fine, we'll get you one." Then he and Chris Clark wrote an interracial romance called All Is Fair. Diana did not do that movie either. Ryan was not able to change her mind about the film, but he must have talked her into something, because they are still steamy, reported gossip columnist Susie. Susie apparently misread the smoke signals. Ryan was upset, maybe only because Diana took months to decide and then said no. He was tired of Diana Ross now. He wanted out. But Diana has never accepted rejection of any kind, at least not without a fight. She had 6 months invested in this relationship and decided to pursue Ryan when she returned to Los Angeles. She wanted to convince him that there was more to their romance than just the film. Or perhaps there's a simpler explanation. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. She would call him and pester him from my shop while she was having her hair done, said her hairdresser Eddie Carroll. Apparently, he would instruct his secretary to tell Diana that he wasn't at home. She would hang up the phone so hard, I was afraid she'd break the receiver. One day, she went to the beach house in Malibu, barged in, and started screaming at Ryan. "You son of a bitch, you! I'm calling you and you're ignoring me? How dare you?" Her feelings were hurt. She was pursuing him and didn't care who knew it. Certainly everyone working in the shop knew it, but the guy had cut her loose and that was the end of it. Diana was never able to understand why Ryan O'Neal ended the romance. She thought she had him tied down, observed assistant road manager Michael Brown. And when she found that not to be true, she was absolutely mortified. She wore the amethyst ring for years after Ryan O'Neal was out of her life. But because of what happened with O'Neal, she decided to hell with beauty. Next time, she'll go for money. Ryan O'Neal, who started romancing Lee Major's ex-wife Farrah Fawcett after ending his affair with Diana, put the romance with Diana in perspective when he said, all of a sudden, she didn't want to play a woman guarded by a white bodyguard because Diana Ross doesn't want to show her body, doesn't want to do sex scenes on the screen, doesn't want to sing, and doesn't want to be black, he concluded bitterly. As you can see, we are obviously no longer an item. This is the end of the Motown Chronicles, Part 14. See you soon.
Anthem you can sing, reach out and touch. All right, come on.
Make this world a better place if you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. And make this world a better place if you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. Oh. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen.